The Imperial War Museum in London will reopen this weekend after being closed in total for 12 months, while the historic landmark underwent a major facelift. £40 million has been spent on its first significant update since the 1980s. The centrepiece is a new gallery devoted to the centenary of the First World War. In a moment, Laura Hawkins takes a tour, but first Geoff Meade reports on how the new building has been designed to be future-proof, with a whole floor left empty to display items from wars yet to be fought.
From the outside, the famous facade in Lambeth, South London, looks unchanged. The oldest of the Imperial War Museum's 5 centres throughout Britain has altered little since its signature naval guns were installed in the 60s. But on Saturday it reopens with a jaw-dropping welcome for the first visitors since the doors closed in January. This new 4-storey galleried atrium for the first time not only gives space for the biggest exhibits, but also provides an extra floor ready for future wars relics.
The museum was very fortunate actually, because it had too many visitors. So it was designed in the late 1980s for about 700,000 visitors a year, and we were already up to 1.1 million. So everything creaked. So not enough toilets, not enough cafe space, every gallery packed, our air conditioning not built for the same thing. So it was starting to become a little bit of a torture as a visitor experience.
Most attention will focus on this new gallery, housing a comprehensive display dedicated to every aspect of World War I. From uniforms, weapons to letters home, no fewer than 1,300 separate items are on display, from the intensely personal to the battle-winning. It's a huge scope of this gallery that really impresses, not just howitzers and hell of the trenches, which you'd expect, of course, but look at this, a modern hands-on display that demonstrates very vividly the problems of provisioning and supplying that huge army across the Channel, and all the difficulties involved in keeping the war going, leading on to the changes that brought about on the home front. Founded during the war itself, the museum keeps safe the memories and actual items used by those who fought it. But for a new generation with no personal link to that conflict, this display tries to explain why as well as how the war was fought.
We've assumed less specific knowledge, and so one of the things you'll find is that this isn't just 1914-18, it's 1900 to 1929. So it explains where the war came from, and then it explains how the war didn't just suddenly stop in 1918, it goes on for 10 more years. It affects everybody's lives as they go back and pick up their lives again, and that's the bigger context.
Beyond the war's centenary, the display will remain a permanent highlight, the museum becoming a centre of national and international research into the first total war. Geoff Meade, Forces News, Lambeth.
Well, Laura Hawkins has been taking a closer look at the new displays.
Said to be the richest and most comprehensive collection in the world, there are over 1,300 objects here on display. They range from weapons, uniforms and equipment, to diaries and letters, keepsakes and photographs. They thought it was going to be a very quick war, but really this is the reality now, isn't it? What we see here.
Well, we now know, of course, that the war was to last for 4 years, and during that time 750,000 British troops are killed, 250,000 from the Empire. So that gives us an idea of the breadth of the suffering. But if we want some kind of notion of the depth of that suffering, perhaps this letter here is also revealing. It's written by a woman in March 1917 to her fiancé on the Western Front, and she writes to him that she's not heard from him in a little while. "I'm a little bit anxious, dear." What she doesn't know is that he's been killed by a sniper the previous day.
Although tragic, it's the stories, letters and eyewitness accounts that make this gallery, and it's in a generation where many no longer have relatives who were alive throughout the First World War.
What we wanted to do in the new galleries, it was to bring alive the thoughts of people at the time, during the war, from letters, from diaries. This is the evidence that we have of how people felt about the war, and that was before they knew how it was going to end.
If you spend some time exploring the collections here, then you'll find some rather positive and touching stories and objects that you've never seen before, like this button from a German tunic. This is where a British and a German soldier exchanged buttons on the Christmas truce. It says here, "I went out and found a German who spoke English a little, and we exchanged buttons and cigarettes. We laughed and joked together, having forgotten war altogether. The new £40 million Transform Museum will open its doors to the public on Saturday. Laura Hawkins, Forces News, Imperial War Museum.